The discovery of the impacts of emissions on global temperatures was it was mentioned even in the 1800s by Arrhenius, for example, and then there's been good work by Eunice Foote and Guy Callender. But in the 1970s, Wally Broker was the first one to raise the alarm based on that CO2 curve we saw from Keeling's measurements on Mauna Loa. It started to be called global warming, which became a bit of a controversy because the numbers are small. People conflate weather and climate change, etc. So it became climate change, which is more correct. But then climate also changes on all the time scales, as we saw briefly. Now, agencies or associations like the American Meteorological Society have done analysis to show that we are producing some of the weather which are beyond what we expect in a normal climate. Our warming is obvious. We can show we caused it, but the weather we are creating is creating disruption. So now it is called climate disruption by some people. Nonetheless, the Sustainability Institute took the data and made these maps of what they call chaos map, climate chaos. Okay, whoops, sorry, I don't want to do that. This is showing a number of deaths that are attributable to climate, again going from 2005 to 2017 or so. Here, years are being shown here on the lower right side. I hope I'm recording this with screen capture as well, so you can see the cursor. Nonetheless, you can see that there is a distribution, and the number of deaths in the orange, yellow, red colors are high. So India and China and parts of Africa and Middle East tend to be hotspots. You can see here. So obviously, there is the idea of observing and monitoring and deciding whether climate chaos is increasing, and also looking at particular countries like this with various types of unrest, conflict, demonstrations, looting, protest, riot, suicide, and so on. You can see the symbols there and the resources affected like food, fuel, and water. It's showing the same years, and you can see the number of deaths varying year to year based on what kind of climate chaos was created. So it's important to track these things and then also know the vulnerability. It's called a social vulnerability. This is nice work by Vital from Indian Institute of Technology in Mumbai with his advisors Subhankar Karmakar and Subhimal Ghosh, which takes many quantities like this for two census data. This is from 2001 and this is from 2011, and the red line is the average percentage contribution by all indicators, but here is the contribution by each indicator to the total vulnerability. Total female population, non-working number of households, and medical facilities, elderly population, permanent jobs, temporary jobs, even their status in the community, in the society as lower castes or upper castes, whether they are disabled, whether they have access to electricity, and the key indicator that I liked is somewhere here, that is women's education, primary education. Okay, so you have to look at the change in the vulnerability. This is showing the socioeconomic vulnerability to natural hydroclimatic hazards like drought, floods, extreme rainfall, heat waves, and so on. And this is for 2011. You cannot see the difference very clearly here, but you can see that 76% of the regions have reduced social vulnerability going from 20 2001 to 2011 census. The new census of 2021 should come up next year, and it'll be good to see what has happened further. So the investments in weather and climate forecasts, in actions based on those forecasts, better infrastructure, better education for women. Okay, this makes a big difference as well in reducing the social vulnerability. So these give you a way to prioritize your resources when you combine the increase in natural hazards. Over this time, there has been a substantial increase in natural hazards in many places, and yet the social vulnerability to those hazards has decreased, like the number of deaths in cyclones or floods, food insecurity during droughts, and so on. So, good news, right? Excellent news, but a lot of work still to be done, of course, in terms of growing the economy without increasing the carbon footprint and so on. So here's the Puente protest talking about clean energy, restoring the coastlines, and so on. And this is, again, living in harmony with nature. This is a photograph from the Central Coast Alliance of the US for Sustainable Economy. Citizen awareness and citizen involvement is always critical. This is the indigenous bloc at the Rise for Climate March. Rise for Climate, Jobs and Justice. Justice. This is what we are trying to focus on. The beautiful streets of DC. This is again in San Francisco. So obviously higher intrinsic values in liberal places, but San Francisco also provides more amenities to its workers and tolerates its homeless people better. People who go to San Francisco obviously face lots of disparities because there are very rich people. Housing is mostly unaffordable for workers, so they have to live outside and come in and so on. So typical urban problems. But nonetheless, people like to go there because they feel that they can be part of a progressive community where they can grow and get better life in the future, right? So this is about how multiple factors have to be tracked. Changes in climate impacts in your region, changes in vulnerability, what kind of vulnerability, and whether you're on the right trajectory to reducing vulnerability, and how the impacts are distributed across a region so that resources can be prioritized, right? So that's where climate justice is going to come from, tracking every aspect of climate impact to decisions on the streets and policies. So we'll talk a bit more about policies in the coming podcasts.